All right. Well, welcome to the podcast. We last week we had Melissa Ross, and there was a mention to Bill Ross, and now looky here.
I'm here.
We've got Bill on the podcast this week.
There was a slight mention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the mention was Melissa Ross.
Well,
Bill's
I was
wife.
nervous. I was nervous.
Yeah,
I'm glad it was no more than a slight mention.
Bill's
Coulda
wife,
gone
and then we moved
bad.
on. Yeah.
Bill, I was here. I would have not let it go down a dark path. I would have protected
Jeff.
you. I would have protected you. You know that.
So is that a message to Melissa then?
Of what?
That you're going to protect me around her?
Well, no. If both of you are in the room, I'm on her side. I mean, you know that. I mean, she and I always gang up on you and Julie.
And thankfully, I've got Julie.
Oh,
who-
100%.
and so the two of us as a team, I think.
It's like
could
2.5
overtake-
to R2, without question.
I think so.
Yes.
I think so.
Yes.
Yeah.
Julie is in those conversations strictly just to poke. Whichever bear she's poking, she's just going to poke.
Yeah, but she takes up for Bill.
She
It's
does.
crazy. No, it's crazy.
No,
like I've
that's
never.
not crazy. That is
No,
good
Well,
stuff, Jeff.
I know, but what I mean by when I say it's crazy is I can't really think of another friend that we've been around that she runs to their defense so quickly than she does with
She
you.
feels so sorry for me.
Maybe
She's
that's
just
I
like,
never thought about
someone's
that,
got to
but-
save him
No, but she's
from
very
himself even.
like she's very defensive over you. It's really funny because like I'll just be at home saying something like.
So y'all talk about me at home.
Well, no,
then.
I'm trying. Well, yeah. Now I'm trying to.
wondering where that was
now
going.
I'm trying to think. Oh, great. Now open up that can of worms.
Yeah, open that.
No, I'll
can.
just say something about, hey, I said, I saw Bill today. Bill and I talked. What'd y'all talk about? Well, I can't tell you. Were you nice? Well, of course I'm nice to Bill. You were mean to him, were you? No, I wasn't mean to Bill. I mean, it was like I get 50 questions. I'm like, man,
Hey,
what about me? What about me? Was
Want to
Bill
talk
could have
about
been
me? You want to talk about
Bill could have been mean to me,
It's true.
but he
Bill would never.
No,
Never ever.
no.
She put me in my place if I did that. So
Well, that's true too.
I know that Julie would do that. Yeah, no.
Maybe.
Well, last week I had a number of people, I guess, that watched the podcast mention you're looking off screen and talking to the unknown person in the room.
I was.
Yeah,
Who was it?
it was me.
Oh, nice.
I was sitting over there in the chair, and they were like, "What Jeff keep looking at?" There was an assumption that.
Oh, okay. It was my imaginary friend.
Yeah, I guess so. Behind the camera.
Yeah. I guess, yeah, you were over there. Yeah, I guess. But see, it was natural because the two ladies were here. But did you notice what happened last week? If you watch it, this is true. If you watched it, you noticed like them having a conversation and me just kind of over here,
Just chilling.
just chilling, just hanging out. Hey, Cameron, what's up? What are you doing? Just
Yeah, no comment on
completely
that.
got left out. Completely. Yeah, it's okay though. It was good. Ladies did a great job.
They did. It was good to have Melissa on. Patty did a good job hosting it.
She really did.
So this week we've mentioned at the beginning of May that this is that May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and so we've got Bill on this week to kind of talk through some of that stuff. We can maybe reference some of our message and what happened yesterday, which was this past Sunday, which was our graduate Sunday, graduate recognition. So yeah, we went through all of that. We may hit on some of that through this process, but when we first mentioned Mental Health Awareness Month, Patty referenced the handout that's been in a bulletin. It's been in the bulletin every week, or was it in that first week and it's just been available in the lobby
I think
since?
it was in the first week and then available in the lobby. Yep.
Yeah.
So if you did or if you didn't grab these, we're gonna kind of be going through some of this stuff. Bill, did you write most of this stuff or any of it?
There was
all of it?
assistance on that part. If you're asking me to be honest, I'm sure.
I got
Really,
nervous
man,
after
Cameron.
Yeah,
I got nervous after I asked
I
that
had
because I didn't know
assistance
the
on
answer.
that, certainly, but I got approval.
There you
I
go.
got to give final approval.
It's definitely
on
your
it.
thoughts, whether
Yes.
you wrote it or
Yeah.
not. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you asking me, did he plagiarize? Like, what are you asking?
I just didn't
Bill,
know
did
if
you
it was
plagiarize this? Bill, did you like copy
I did
this?
not
Or
plagiarize it, but
Wow.
I had help with the processing of it.
Okay.
Okay.
I was trying to give credit where credit was due, and
Okay.
apparently it's not due to Bill, but that's okay.
What,
Let's know that other
just
side
kidding.
of it.
Just
is-
kidding.
I
The
get
other
credit
side is
for
you.
that.
Okay.
Julie's gonna call in any minute now
Partially.
and start taking up for Bill.
Julie,
So,
please help.
But I was reading through this earlier, and I mean, there's a lot of really good stuff in here on this side. On the front side, kind of talking through just the reason for needing mental health. need to take care of your mental health, but then on the other side, really the kind of the practical tips. So this is where you were very integral in writing that. Is that what you're?
Yeah, the holistic part.
Yeah. So I think it'd be good just to kind of walk through some of this. There's an intellectual side, a physical side, emotional, social, and spiritual. And so some of these, there's just some holistic tips, or I guess mindful tips for a holistic approach to mental health. So, first it said intellectual, develop a hobby, interest, or a self-help book, converse with others, and get into a group Bible study. So maybe get us started off.
Can I ask a question before you ask that question?
Sure.
I think this would be a great question. Bill.
Yep.
What do you mean by a holistic approach to mental health?
Just what Cameron said, a holistic combining.
Okay, that was not a great question. Never
mind.
It's
a great question.
Jeff,
Jeff, no, that was a fantastic question. It's those 5 areas interact with one another.
Yeah.
If one of them is not balanced, it's going to affect the physical part, the emotional part, the spiritual part. So if one of those is weak and not in balance, it's going to affect the others.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I asked that, because we have such a tunnel vision view of mental health, counseling, things of that nature. And it goes strictly to the issue of mental illness.
Right.
And if I don't feel like I qualify in that category, then I don't need to be thinking about mental health.
Right.
And that's just not the case at all.
Yeah.
No.
It's such a bigger, broader picture of our overall the holistic view of life.
Absolutely. When I finished secular school, I knew that there was a component missing. I was a Christian. I've been involved in church, and back in the day it was called Baptist Student Union and all those kind of things. But when I finished, I realized there was something I didn't get from my secular education, and that was the spiritual part of that. And I went very reluctantly screaming and yelling to New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary because I knew that was a key component.
Yeah.
Anytime that their spiritual part is out of kink, out of place, it's going to affect the others.
Yeah, that's right.
One of the things that I'm so adamant about and encouraging is people getting involved in church. You know, I'm here on this campus. I encourage people who don't have a church affiliation to attend here or get back into the church that they were attending. Because if you look at all 5 of those, this church, I feel like Emmanuel provides all 5 of those. Not just necessarily the counseling. You do provide that. That's above and beyond. But I also think that the church provides the social part, even the physical parts at times. We have activities, we have things going on, we have things going on for youth. I think the emotional part, certainly people can come to different staff members here at this church and talk to them about depression or stress, or if they're going through marital problems. The intellectual part, we always have small group studies that are going on here that make people more aware and more cognizant of what's going on there. And then certainly that spiritual side of that. If that's missing and you have all 4 of those, it's still not balanced.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the physical side, we've got pickleball now. We've got stuff going on at the church that you can stay physically active. Pickleball, Jeff.
We got to get more people involved in that.
Yeah, we started doing pickleball on Thursday night.
I haven't been yet.
This is, I don't know if this is mental health conversation or not, but how did that come about? Like, and is that an Emmanuel thing, or is it just happening at Emmanuel?
Well, no, it is. It actually came through our men's ministry when we had a big men's ministry meeting. They were trying to create affinity groups, things that people like to do. They're already doing them, and so let's get together. Let's involve some church people and see if we can create some community, you know, and around these things that we're already doing. So you got some guys that golf together, you got some guys that are playing pickleball together. So that's really kind of how it started. And then I think what became the genesis or the catalyst of it was somebody from the Lebanon Police Department called and said, "Man, we would love to utilize your all's life center for pickleball one night a week. Would you guys be up for that?" And we're like, "Man, by the way, you know, we're actually wanting to start a pickleball as well." And they said, "Let's just play together."
Yeah.
So that's kind of how that came about. So they already had the nets, they came in and put the courts down, and so we do it on Thursdays, I think from 5 to 6:30.
Yeah.
And it reaches out to the community.
It does,
as well.
absolutely.
Outside,
Yep.
the church has left the building.
Yeah.
It's exactly right. And so, it's been hard. Like for Julie and I have not been up here because Braylon normally has softball games on Thursdays. So there's always that going on. There's always something going on with your kids or grandkids. But they've had some good crowds.
Yeah.
So it's been really neat to see that develop.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I love this kind of back to the balance of all 5 areas conversation and the holistic approach. I know, I don't remember who was doing announcements that week, but whoever mentioned the holistic, and it may have been Patty, but whoever mentioned the holistic conversation, for some reason, for me, when I hear the word holistic, my mind goes to those TikTok moms or like the Whole Foods, like it goes to that like just natural type side of things.
Essential oils,
yeah, all these things. Do you find that it like is that a guy thing that my mind tends to go there? Do you see more girls being more at least willing to jump into these things up front? Obviously, it is very beneficial for guys and girls. It is my fault that I look at it that way. But do you think there's more of a willingness for females to get involved before guys?
Not anymore.
Really?
It used to be primarily a lot of females would reach out first, but I see that changing. There are a lot of guys that are recognizing things, and maybe it's just how culture has changed, but they're not afraid to ask for help.
Yeah.
They look at it from different perspectives. And you mentioned like Whole Foods, but holistic is spelled differently.
It is, yes.
People think it's spelled with a W, but it's holistic spelled with an H, H-O-L. So I just think that gives a different component to it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you help like maybe the guys or even girls that hear it and are like, I think I'm good with mental health. Like I've got that figured out. How do you help them maybe see the benefits of, even if you are in a good mental state, to think through some of these things and think through, is my mental state or just my mental health actually in a good place, or do I need to check it?
Again, I'm going to go back to involvement in the church and being a part of the church. It kind of like keeps things in a good, healthy place. We have ups and downs. We have crises. We have things that happen, whether it's a death or divorce or whatever. But the church is there to support those people. If it's bringing food over there what other institution do you know that actually covers all 5 of those categories?
Yeah.
I don't know of another one that does other than your local church.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's kind of jump into some more of these specifics. That first one, intellectual, the first one is interesting. So just develop a hobby or interest. What is it about like just developing some type of hobby that could help the intellectual side of your mental health?
Well, developing a hobby does accent the intellectual, but it also helps with depression and moods, and it goes back down to that emotional part. If you're involved in an activity and you're physically active, we know from the neurological part of that your brain's going to start producing its own natural antidepressants.
Yeah.
And so when that starts occurring, not only is your brain stimulated, but your body is stimulated as well.
And are there specific types of hobbies that may be recommended in that, or are there some that wouldn't be as beneficial in this?
Well, anything taken to the extreme can be bad, even if it's sports. People sometimes get too focused on sports, not wanting to step on any toes. But there was a time where I remember,
wow, was that directed across the table?
No, sir, not at all.
I mean,
but there's a time where I could remember that kids were not going to practice on Sundays, or games didn't happen on Sundays or Wednesday nights, and that's changed highly. And I think we're seeing some results of that. Not putting down any sports related things, but it's a fact of what's going on there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which means it all comes to balance. It all comes down to balance.
Yeah,
totally.
And like when you look at these areas, you think about spokes on a wheel. You've used that illustration. Perfect. I mean, you get one of those spokes that are out of balance, and that wheel is just not going to roll correctly, and then that's going to start affecting every aspect of your life.
Yeah.
And so it's really easy to see when any one of these things gets out of kilter. It's just like when your foot hurts, you change the way you walk. Now
exactly.
Now your knee hurts.
Yes.
Now your hip hurts. It just starts working up through. and it can so easily happen in
I
situations
like that
this.
spoke analogy there, Jeff. I thought that was really good. If a spoke is off the wheel, it is definitely going to affect what's going on there. The rest of them may be strong and secure.
That's
but
exactly right. Just one can get off a little bit. I mean, it's like pushing that. I mean, when we come to food pantry, and grab those carts, and you always get the cart that's got the bad wheel on it. And just how hard it is to push that thing, and how much more energy it takes. And so you think when one of your spokes gets off like that, how much more energy it drags out of the other areas of your life to try to find that balance.
Yeah.
And you can't find it. A lot of times you can't find it.
Yeah.
Until you fix that one problem.
Yeah, I like that. The other in the intellectual area, you've got develop a hobby or interest, self-help book, converse with others, and group Bible study. And then going into the physical is an interesting one because I think from a mental health state, depending on how you are, for me, that one just makes sense. Like because I've experienced it. Those that you wrote down are get more sleep, proper nutrition and diet, breathing and meditation, and physical activity. I know for me, when I'm eating well, or the flip side, when I'm not eating well, even just the way I think is completely different. Or if I haven't been physically active recently, but when I'm in a healthier spot, my mental health is in a better spot.
If I don't sleep well for a couple of days, it definitely affects my mood, my ability to think and process, and all of it there. So. Yeah.
One that I haven't on this list that I haven't spent as much time with, the breathing and meditation. Talk to us about that a little bit, because that too in my brain when I read that,
I know what you're going to say.
I go straight to the essential oils, kumbaya, sitting in a circle.
Well, I'm going to deflect this back to Jeff a little bit here, in that early Christians and even the Jewish people did meditation. It wasn't the Eastern kind of meditation, but they did times of sitting quietly and listening to God. Right. Certainly prayer is important. Prayer is a part of meditation, but this is nothing new. It's nothing of the, like I said, the Middle Eastern kind of thing.
Right.
But Jeff, you can talk about that part of how Jewish people meditated.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think it's hard because I think what you mentioned is so true. We go directly to Eastern mysticism when we think about meditation. And so we've just kind of, thrown that off. And the reality is that, the Bible says very clearly that we're to meditate on Scripture. We're to meditate on God and His Word. Be still and know that I am God. And I think that's been one of the hardest things for me to do. Is I remember one time, I think when I was at Lifeway, we talked about going on a silence retreat.
Yes.
I'm like, man, that is the most painful thing I could ever imagine doing.
It requires a great deal of discipline, doesn't it?
Well, I didn't go.
Oh. All right. So it requires a great deal of...
So I don't know. But that, we were going to go up to Swanee in that area, beautiful area, to their campus. And, they had rooms for us. Nobody was on campus. And you got a room and you just sit in there for hours and you walked and you didn't talk. You didn't talk to anybody. You didn't say anything.
You must not have had little kids at that point, because that sounds amazing to me right now.
Yeah, no, I didn't. I did not, but it still sounded horrible.
To have an ounce of silence for something.
Yeah. No, man, that's I'm
but
out.
for a lot of people, that is uncomfortable.
Yes.
Absolutely.
You have
to develop that.
Yeah. And I'm not, I call myself, and I think this is true, I'm an extroverted introvert. So I'm not an extrovert. Just because I can get up and preach on Sunday mornings doesn't mean I'm an extrovert.
Yeah.
I think that people confuse those things, because
absolutely,
I'm not the life of the party when we're in a group. You know what I mean? Like, I'm kind of back hanging out. I'm just kind of observing. And so anyway, so I know that about myself. So it's not like I need a lot of people around me, but just the idea of silence for a long period of time.
Right.
Is intimidating.
Yeah.
Like, I would much rather wrestle a Russian than tell me I have to be silent for 3 hours.
It's amazing when we start working with different people in groups on meditation and breathing, that 5 minutes can seem like an hour at first.
Yes.
But once they learn how to do it, it's like you could do 30 minutes and it feels like 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah.
It's amazing. The breathing part of that, there's nothing magical or special about that. It's a physiological part of the body that will affect you emotionally. of lowering your anxiety. It's one of the best preventative things as far as anxiety is
Really?
concerning. Now, I know some people have to take medication. I'm not against that. But I'm just saying, if you learn the right kind of deep breathing, it increases your outer body temperature, lowers your pulse rate. You just get into a calm place, and it can be very effective in dealing with anxiety and stress.
Okay, so in our conversation so far, 20 minutes, twice you've mentioned that there are natural ways for us to deal with aspects of our body
Yes.
that a lot of people will go to medication to deal with.
Yes.
Okay, so like your body creates its own antidepressants. When you're
Beta
exercising,
endorphins,
things,
beta endorphins.
things of that nature. We just talked about lowering our stress level and things of that nature. I know you're not against medicine, but let me ask you this question, if you're comfortable answering it. Do you feel like we are living in an over-medicated society?
Yes, I do. I'm not against medication, and
Right.
certainly there's certain mental illnesses like schizophrenia or bipolar that definitely need that. There's deep depression that can be genetic, and so it's a chemical imbalance.
Right.
But at the same time, I think if you put these 5 holistic things into play, it can greatly benefit you, again, physically, emotionally, spiritually.
Yeah, because the
kind of
easiest thing to do is to get something that's artificial to come into our life to kind of solve this for us, because we really don't have time
Right.
to work on these things.
Right.
But God has made our body in such a way that we can actually help ourselves if we will put some work into
Yes.
it.
But certainly if somebody's on medication that's been prescribed and they may be in counseling at the same time, I'm not saying
Absolutely.
don't do that,
No,
but
absolutely
there are
not.
other ways of,
No.
of approaching it.
Yeah,
Yes.
because I'm a firm believer in, your brain being just another organ of your body, and just as your heart will fail and your kidneys will fail, your brain will fail. And when your brain gets out of balance, when your brain fails, your brain needs to be medicated.
Yes.
And so I'm a firm believer in that. I think there are a lot of people out there that have this view of our Christian life and spirituality that, when it comes to my physical health, I'm fine with taking whatever medicines, the doctors prescribe. But when it comes to my mental health, I'm not okay with that, because I think I should be able to overcome that.
Right.
And I cannot overcome my high blood pressure because I'm a believer in Jesus. And I can't overcome my pre-diabetic condition
Exactly.
because I'm a believer in Jesus. Those
Right.
are just failings of my body that's fallen and will continue to decay. That's just a part of that process. My brain is a part of that process.
Sure. And at the same time, following those 5 holistic things, even as a pre-diabetic, when you look at the exercise, you look at being around other people and lowering your stress, that will affect
Absolutely.
your diabetes in a positive way.
That's
I
right.
can speak from firsthand on that part.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in the last 2.5, 3 months, I've lost some weight. And so I've noticed that by doing that, my blood pressure medicine has decreased,
Yes.
because I don't need it anymore. So yes, I think I think,
And your energy level, how's that been affected with that, the weight loss and
I think it's, what's been interesting about that, Bill? It's interesting you mentioned that, because I've just noticed this recently, is that I think my energy level has been better,
okay.
but I've also noticed that I don't need as much sleep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now that's very interesting, because
Yeah.
I've never been the 5 o'clock in the morning guy. Like, I'll just go ahead and tell you, like 8 o'clock classes at seminary, those were tough. College, same thing. Just you had to
Think
do
back to
them.
those days. I'm like, how was that tough? But anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, I had to
I was
drop a
with you.
class. I had to drop a class one time because it was at 8
o'clock.
a.m.
Yes, yeah. Because you just, when you're 18 years old, you don't want to wake up at 8 o'clock in the morning. You just don't want to. But now I'm finding myself naturally waking up at 5:30, 6 o'clock, 6:30, and like going, I need to go back to sleep. But you really don't. I feel very awake. So to your point, I think it's helped with that, and definitely rest. And so it's both and. I think people have to understand this. So go back to the word balance.
Yes.
Right? There's a balance there, and you've got to be willing to balance, because there are some medications, regardless of how much weight I lose, I'm not going to get off of those because that's just my body. I just have to take those.
Absolutely.
But there are some that, because I'm attempting to do some things that I'm able to kind of get off of those. So there's that balance there. It's a both and situation, not an either or. I wish it was either or. I wish that our bodies weren't fallen and they're not redeemed. They'll never be redeemed. These bodies have a time limit on them. Mm-hmm. They have a purpose and a time limit. And we know that. That's why when we die, there's something in the box, right? Because it's not redeemed. Our spirits go to be with the Lord. Our bodies stay. Our brains are a part of that process.
100%.
And I think people have got to get over the hump of not realizing that your brain is an organ like your heart and your lungs and your kidneys, and it will fail you.
Right.
And when it does, we need to pay attention, and we need to get the help that we need.
Yeah. One of the things that we've seen is we're looking now at childhood events and evaluations for that, childhood negative events, and how that affects your body physically.
Are you getting into inner child now? Are we going to talk? Are we going to talk about that?
I was headed in that direction. Are you uncomfortable?
Are you trying to make me uncomfortable?
Yeah,
Bill?
your face is a little bit red right now, Jeff. Yeah.
Here we go.
But knowing what our past was does affect how we live now, and understanding it helps us to overcome that.
Yeah. I
was also going to mention that I found,
but isn't that stereotypical?
What?
Like, isn't that stereotypical?
It's your mama's fault. It's your daddy's fault.
Yes, you know what I mean? Yes. And I think because of that, we've discounted it.
Yeah.
But what we don't realize is that the things that we went through as children in those formative years,
right,
where our brains were developing and we were trying to determine what was right and wrong, and when that gets skewed, Bill, you and I have talked about this a lot.
Yes, we have. I was just going to say.
When that gets skewed and something traumatic happens in the life of a child, if that's not dealt with, they will get on an alternate path of development
100%.
That will be unhealthy the rest of their life. If
whether it's relationship or even physical, they're more in a higher risk category of developing like diabetes or heart issues, blood pressure issues.
And where I see it, like as a pastor, is a couple coming in, a person coming in, having an issue, something has happened, and I'm asking the question, how did this happen?
Right.
Where did this come from? I sure didn't see that one coming.
Exactly, yeah.
And not realizing that and that's the beauty of our relationship and our ministry connection is I know when I have those situations, I may not be able to get to the answer, but you're going to have a better chance of getting there than I can.
And also, because we've talked about this, I will go to you and definitely the spiritual aspects of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the marital aspects too, from a pastoral counseling thing is high on my list. You know that.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the beauty of our partnership is, like, I know sitting there, and I think a lot of guys, a lot of pastors will want to be the person that figures that out. You know, and unless we have been trained and we're licensed professional counselors, we don't have the skill set to do that. And here's the scary thing. We can do more damage than good if we're not careful.
Yeah, and our motto from the counseling thing is do no harm. You know, it takes a great deal of time, and I don't know how pastors did it because that's who people do go for counseling, but they've got to deal with all the other aspects of the church.
Right.
I wanted to go back and mention, you were talking about waking up earlier. I found people who've gotten into a routine of Bible study, devotion, and meditation. They say that their clock kind of changes. They're waking up at 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
They're not a morning person, but they're waking up, and it's almost like their body is craving that time of meditation and that time spent in a spiritual aspect.
Yeah. And coffee.
And coffee. Nothing wrong with coffee.
No, not at all. And it's coming, Cameron. I know you're sitting there thinking, man, where does that life? Yeah. You got 2 small kids, you know, like you guys, you don't have that time right now. And a lot of our young families that listen, a lot of our young families that are in a phase of life where that time is being dictated for them. Yep. Like you're not choosing when you get out of bed. You're not choosing what you do when you get up. That's being dictated because you've got small children.
Yeah, you know, really have.
Which I think makes it a little more complicated as to when do you find the time to make sure some of these things are being taken care of. Yeah. You know, which I think because I think we do have a lot of our young families and families with small kids and children that they just don't have, man, I wish I had the time to think about doing these things, but I just don't have the time. So Bill, how do we find the time to do these types of things? Like, how How does that fit into a
Took
busy?
my next question. That's what I was going
a
with.
busy. Oh, I'm not hosting. Oh, never mind.
You're doing a great job.
You were supposed to host
You're doing a
last
great
week.
job.
Ryan,
No, I felt a little left out over here. You and Bill were, having a conversation. But seriously, like, how does a guy like Cameron, how does he find time for this?
Well, Cameron, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Oh, me. Who's hosting? What's happening right now?
Well, Jeff and I are definitely in control right now. No, how do you find time? You've got 2 kids. You've got a lot of demands and things on you. What are the things that you've learned to do?
That's a great question. Because one of the things I was going to say when we're talking about the physical, that's been a struggle for us lately, especially when it comes to I am in my best like mental state, and why I gravitate to that one. I personally am in my best mental state when I do have a good eating habit at the time and am in a rhythm of working out. What me and Taylor are kind of wrestling with right now is I am the most consistent when I go on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, just 3 days a week. I've done it 4 at times. I've done it 5 at times, but I can stay the most consistent long term when I'm Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Well, she's been doing phenomenal, but she's on Monday, Wednesday, Friday right now. So I've struggled with trying to find, because we've got little kids, like we can't both be gone in the morning at the same time. Afternoons are inconsistent and busy. So that's been our biggest struggle right now. I could do Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, but that's tough. Right. Nobody wants to get up and go to the gym on Saturday.
Yeah.
So it is tough. Sleep, that any of these, I could probably pick out any of these and give a challenge to them, but I don't know that I have a great answer to how I do it, because there's a lot of these I'm like, I don't know that I do that.
You both mentioned diet. We know what sugar can do and other foods, but we know how it affects in a positive way dieting correctly with ADD. Or my wife's cousin, she had a child that was pretty high on the autism spectrum, and she dealt with it. They initially started out with some medication, but she turned it over with her doctor's guidance to diet control. And he is now, I think he's in graduate school.
Is that just,
wow.
When you say diet control, is that just like portion control?
No, it was selective foods that they had and didn't have on there. And it worked incredibly well for him on that.
Yeah. Wow. So that kind of comes back to that natural versus medicated conversation too, where even with stuff like ADD, yes, the brain's an organ, medication helps some of these things, but there are holistic approaches that can help a lot of these areas. Go ahead.
I want to back up. I'm not going to spend a long time on this, Jeff, but you mentioned inner child, and you hear about it a lot lately across the board, the inner child. And I think there's a lot of truth to it. And I know you've looked into it, Jeff. I've encouraged you to. Would you agree that everybody probably has an inner child of one type or another?
Yes, I would. And it's, I think there are people out there who feel like me, I feel like I had the best childhood ever, and it's funny how, like, I say that, you ask my brother, a year and a half older than I am, that same question. I don't know that he would have the same answer as I have.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that means I just blocked things out. I just didn't pay. I don't know, because he and I went through the same experiences, and I know what those are, and I know what he would be referencing, but maybe that's just the Lord. The Lord just gave me a different view of that. But anyway, yes, I think that there is an inner child in all of us. Like I can't name them right now, but it's easy for me to look at the list and realize that, for me in my life, I think that there were things that I felt like I needed to accomplish to validate myself or to other people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So as much as I don't want to think the drive to become a national champion, an All-American or whatever it was just me wanting to be an athlete. I know how
you had skills and abilities.
Yeah, but I knew how we grew up. I knew what we had and didn't have. But I was around people who had a lot more than we had, and so a lot of those experiences affect you in a way that you don't realize. For example, like for me, and so for me, it was I always leaned back toward, but yeah, I can do this, and so where I would excel in this area. I think allowed me somehow in my mind to create some balance.
Yes.
In that I may not have all that you have, but I can do this and you can't. Mm-hmm. And because of that puts me at a difference. You know what I mean? So
Absolutely.
So then you start going into life with that mentality. You know what I mean? So I think some people just call it being competitive. Well, you can call it what you want to. You know,
Right.
you got to, at some point you start asking yourself the question, why are you so competitive?
Yeah.
What are you trying to gain? Where's that?
One of the need to achieve.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, need to achieve. I'm not going to claim that that's who I am because I've not read it but you probably would say that.
Before you go too far, talking about the inner child in general, what do you mean by that? Because some people, I've heard y'all throw it around. I've told Bill before, I don't think I have an inner child. I have an outer child, and somewhere down I've got an inner adult. But what do you when you say inner child?
I don't know what to say after that. An inner adult. Well, yeah, you've got an inner child that maybe has never grown up. I don't know if
exactly.
It's an adult or not, but it's just
don't plan on it either.
We were all raised differently. And like you mentioned, you and your brother were in the same household, but you could have perceived things differently, your birth order, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
In my household growing up, I had a dad who had a horrible childhood. He was an orphan in different foster homes, but you could never do it good enough for him. I got first place in a science fair one time, and his thing to me is, you could have picked different colors on the demonstration thing. And so, no matter if you could and you still get recognition for that, he never did fully acknowledge us as doing a great job. It was always what we could have done better. And you grow up with that. And so you feel like you never achieve or never get affirmed.
Wow. So the things you experienced as a child that you still keep with you as an adult.
I'll just mention several of them. We don't have time to go into all of them, but the entitled child.
Yeah.
And it sounds different than what the verse is, but the entitled child feels an entitlement to life.
Yeah.
We were kind of talking about that before we started this, Jeff, that feeling of people who have an entitlement about what they should get and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And
it's
you
amazing.
could probably pick those out.
Yeah. And it's amazing how that skews every situation that they are in.
Doesn't it?
Well,
Yeah. It's unbelievable. Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of that today. And I think we're raising young adults with an entitled child, inner child. That's going to affect them when they get older.
Right.
Because they're going to look at life, they're going to look at a job and say, I'm entitled to this, this, and this. And if they don't get it, they're going to quit and go somewhere else. This idea of, to me, I feel like a 24-year-old going into a career right now and staying 40 years, that doesn't happen anymore.
No.
Because they go to and they get, it's so anyway, so I think, and what got me thinking about and really wanting to dig into this inner child concept is this idea of how people process information.
Exactly.
And so for me, like as a pastor who delivers content, who delivers information, if you're sitting out there in the congregation and you're listening to and you're hearing and you're processing a sermon through the ears of your inner child, you're processing it doesn't matter what I'm saying. It's how you're processing that information.
Exactly.
And how you're hearing that.
right.
So if you're hearing that through the ears of an entitled child or the ears of a need to achieve child or whatever it is, you're going to hear the gospel through that lens.
Yeah.
Like I wish it wasn't the case. Everybody had a clean slate and everybody but that's not the case.
Right.
So somebody hears the gospel or the salvation message from a need to achieve. Well, what's that person become? If they're not careful, they become an overachiever, and now they're trying to earn God's love and favor, and they're working hard toward that because that's how they've lived their entire life. They've lived for affirmation, and so that's how I got interested in it. Is people in our we got 1,100 people on a Sunday morning, processing information through their inner child.
Yeah,
which is so important, and how people process. So many times it's not what we say, it's how somebody hears it.
Exactly.
That matters.
Yeah, how we receive it.
Yeah, how people receive it. That's right.
Yeah. So with kind of this is all very interesting. With all of this, is there one particular area that you think like inner child, past experience, all these things hits on more? Like I'm looking at the intellectual, physical, which those are the only two we've got to, but intellectual, physical, emotional, social, and spiritual. In my mind, I would think that these probably hit more on the emotional side than anything. But do they tend to affect all of these areas?
All of the areas.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. People, Jeff, and you keep me in line here, but they can go to church every Sunday and participate in all these things, but it doesn't necessarily mean, I'm not saying going to church is bad, I'm not saying that, but it doesn't necessarily mean they have a close relationship with the Lord.
No.
And they wonder why there's that missing piece there. Well, there's a spiritual aspect that hasn't been met there.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of times people can come to church looking for the quick fix.
Yes. Yeah.
And so they're looking to fix something that they probably don't even understand is broken. And so they're sitting here. I mean, think about this. How many people come to church, they know something is broken, and they leave, and it doesn't get fixed, and they go back and they wonder, what am I going to do now? If that didn't fix it, what's going to fix it?
Right.
And it's not that the gospel can't fix their problem. It's that they don't understand how to process that information correctly in a way that can deal with the problem, because they're looking for the right answer, but they're putting it in the wrong place, if that makes sense. And so it's this,
And if you're looking at the gospel just to fix a problem, that's not what the gospel is.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. That's the key. And that's why this holistic view is so important, because like we talked about yesterday in the worship service, why do we give an entire hour of church for graduate recognition? Church isn't the place where Johnny gets to sing a solo and feel good about himself.
Yeah.
So why do we do that? Because it's a holistic approach to life. Yeah. It's either we embrace discipleship as life, or we teach students to compartmentalize their faith and their life. And we don't want that. We want to integrate that. And so I think if we can integrate the gospel into everything that we do, and not just the spiritual slice of the pie, the 10% of my week that I need to give to Jesus, then I've checked that box. Now I'm going to go back and live the rest of my life. And to me, that's when the wheel gets way out of balance.
Yeah. I think also, and this may make me unpopular, but social media, and you look at that, how that affects each one of those five things there.
Yep. And
I'll have parents bring in their kids. One of the first things I'll say is, how much time are they spending alone in their room? So I know I'm stepping on some people's toes, but I'm amazed at some of the amounts of time that they're allowing their kids to be engaged in an activity that's just sitting there. And I mean, scientific studies have shown that much time on social media affects the brain and how the brain operates. But
you tell me how in the world my grandson Graham is 1 year. He's 1 1 year old. When he sees a telephone, he starts whining and running toward it.
Yes.
How does a 1 year old do that? Now, it's maybe because I showed him a video of Bluey, or I showed him a video of a preschool song or something that is entertaining and stimulating, and he enjoyed it. And then I put it down. And as soon as he sees one of those at 1 year old, he'll start crawling over to it, and he'll get up on the table and start reaching for it. And it's unbelievable.
Because it's 100% stimulation.
Yeah.
And then you have kids that expect that, or even adults that expect that. They don't know how to deal with delayed gratification.
Right.
They expect it to be interesting all the time, every day. Life isn't that way. I mean, life has a lot of interest, but at that level, your brain's got to have a rest.
Yeah.
Your body's got to have a rest from that.
That's right.
And that's just the entertainment side of a cellular device. That's not even much hitting on the social media side, which you talk about a kid being in a room. Like you could call it mindless scrolling, and sometimes it is, but it's still affecting because when you're, especially for a student who's going, or a student, whatever phase of life you're in, when you're scrolling, it could be mindless, but in the back of your brain, there's a comparison aspect in all of our brains that when we see something, there's a thought that happens with almost every post that we see, or every video, or whatever it may be. And it may just be mindless entertainment, But if it's, someone, and it could be someone we don't even know. And I think this is why influencers are so huge right now. Someone we've never met in our entire life, but for some reason, what they are saying is going to affect my life. And now I'm going to compare my life to what they're saying. How am I doing this? What can I do to make my life better? And so it could be mindless to what you think it is, but in a lot of ways, it still affects us in that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, and the next one, we had intellectual, physical, emotional, I think does hit a lot on that inner child, a lot of that. But I think this is probably a lot of the stuff that you deal with, the things that you wrote down here: acknowledge and process anger and grief, laugh in general. That's an easy one, right?
Well, the Bible talks
laugh.
about laughter.
Yeah.
Laughter's good medicine, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's right. Invest in each discipline and express gratitude daily. That's one that we forget a lot. Really, a lot of these are. But acknowledge and process anger and grief. Talk to us a little bit about that, because I think that can get into that inner child side. I think we in this culture a lot of times think of therapy and think that you only go to therapy if you're the worst of the worst and you really need help and you're at your last, at the end of the rope.
Yeah.
But these are some things that we can do in our own personal lives, but also there's times that we need a therapist, a counselor, whatever it may be, to help us with some of those things.
If you took a poll amongst people and said, how many of you were taught how to deal with anger? How many people out of 100 do you think would say, yes, I was taught how to deal with anger?
Yep.
Maybe 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We weren't really taught that. We saw how our parents dealt with it.
Right.
Or didn't deal with it.
Yeah.
And so people a lot of times think anger is a sin. And the proper expression of anger is healthy. Jesus expressed anger. He used verbal words sometimes to express that. The Bible says, be angry and sin not. Let me toss the ball back to you, Jeff, on that part. How can you be angry and sin not?
Yeah, I think anger is an emotion. I think it's a natural emotion that we have to deal with when it comes to, because we have our spirit and we have our flesh. And so our flesh always feels like it's been done wrong. I think the one thing people don't understand and realize is how strong and how powerful their flesh is. And they feel like that I wake up and go into the day in neutral, and it can either go good or bad. And what they don't understand is you wake up and you've got a flesh that wants to take you down the bad road every day of your life. And so you're fighting against that, right? You're battling against that every day. And so we're renewing our minds in the scripture and things of that nature. But something's going to happen that frustrates you, that comes across, that doesn't do right. You're going to feel like you've been done wrong. I mean, you're going to get angry, right? The guy's going to pull out in front of you on the road, whatever. Okay, your response is where the sin comes in.
Yes.
Because you can't control the fact that person did this. Now, I think you can control this, and you could correct me if I'm wrong. I think you can control, people talk about having short fuses.
Yes.
Like I'm just not one of those guys that has a short fuse.
Right.
Because I think it's silly. When somebody pulls that in front of me, or when somebody gets mad at me and starts, throwing their hands up out their windows and pointing certain fingers at me and things of that nature, I just kind of laugh and go, look how mad that person is.
Yeah, and it's a choice that you've made.
That person is
you chose to deal with that anger.
That person is so angry.
Yeah.
Why is that person so angry?
Yeah.
Like, what has happened in that person's day that makes them feel that way? Because they're not bothering me at all.
No.
Or they're blowing their horn. And I'm like,
Jeff, you said you weren't going to mention that when I blew the horn at you the other day.
Well, that's true. And I'm like, what is that accomplishing? Like, that is accomplishing nothing.
Yeah.
But some other people, man, it flies all over them. And, take Julie, for example. Julie is very wired for justice. So much so, like so black and white and so just justice oriented. Where
is that why you called her a cop yesterday?
100%. Yeah, she. I'm just telling you, man, and she's okay with it. That's the crazy thing about it. She's like, yeah, I'm good with that. But she very much is. If anywhere at any point in time she sees injustice, well, Bill, come on, Bill helped us through a very, very difficult time in our life. It's not why I love him so much, but it helps. because here's a guy who stepped into our life, fought for our granddaughter, really, really made sure she was protected in a time when she couldn't protect herself. And without him, she wouldn't be where she is today. Like, we know that without a shadow of a doubt, right? So this is not just, this is real for me. This is not just kind of play talk, right? And Bill understands that. But in that process over those years, you saw how Julie responded to some of those things, and the injustice that bubbles up in you.
It's tough.
It's tough. It's real. It's hard. And so you're not saying it's not real or it's hard, but how do you respond?
Yeah.
Right. So it's not the feeling. It's not the emotion. That's the one thing. Yesterday, she said something to me. She was sharing some things with me that frustrated her, and I just listened to her, and that's really all I did. I didn't say anything. I just listened. Later on that evening, she said, "I want to thank you for helping me through that, because you did a really good job of listening." Now, the backside of that was because here's my normal. Well, let me give you 3 things you need to be doing. Right. My normal is to be very pragmatic, either talk her off the ledge and say, no, these things aren't really real.
Goal oriented.
Yes. But hey, if you'll do this, this, and this, I think you're going to be fine.
Yeah.
Because I am wired that way. I'm very coach ABC 1, 2, 3, do these 3 things and you're going to be good.
Yeah.
And I just thought to myself, man, it's so sad that in the past I probably negated her feelings, not meaning to.
Not intentional.
Not intentional. But when you say to somebody, well, no, that's not really that way. Well, here's what you're doing. I'm negating the way you feel about something. It doesn't matter if it is or it isn't. You feel that way about it, and that needs to be validated. Right? So now let's talk about how we respond to those things.
Sure.
Getting back to the anger issue.
Yes.
Like, that's where sin can come in. Sorry, I'm the worst at long answers.
No, I think that was an answer that we needed some elaboration on.
Yeah.
If you look at anger, now we look back at the holistic part of what we're talking about, mental health. How could anger affect your thinking? When I get really angry, I'm not thinking the way I need to or processing, right?
Right.
How does anger affect you physically if it's not dealt with in the right way?
Yeah. You can your blood pressure can go
your
through the
blood
roof.
pressure, yeah,
absolutely.
You could really. How does anger affect you emotionally? You could have all kinds of things. How does anger affect you socially? People can see and recognize people that are angry, and angry people don't necessarily want to be around other people. And then again, that part that you just covered of anger is an emotion, but it can become a sin if we don't deal with it in the right way.
That's right.
And that spirituality part of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
When it comes to anger and grief, how, if someone's wrestling with some of these things, or maybe through this even conversation have identified maybe there are some things in my life that I haven't really processed or grieved or dealt with, how do we, should we debate in our minds whether to deal with this holistically and deal with it with ourselves, or go to a counselor, or go to a therapist to maybe talk through some of these things? How do we determine which route we should take on that?
That's hard. That's really hard because, glass half empty, glass half full. I would hope, and I want to say that I hope that no one's ever been hurt by therapy, but there are people who have been.
Yeah.
So, but I would like to think that would be a safe place for people to go to. You were talking about grief, and I had a guy in the other day, and he's this big macho guy, tough, and he cried, and he said, "I feel so weak." And I said, "Jesus wept." Are you calling Jesus a weak? No, I'm not saying that. But Jesus didn't just cry, right, Jeff? He didn't say he cried. He wept. There was an outpouring
that's right.
of emotion on that. And we've had grief share before, and can I tell this one, Jeff, or not?
Is it the candle?
It is the candle.
You got to go back to the candle
story.
So we did a grief share during the holidays, and one of the things we did was just have people light a candle. No denominational thing about that, but just light a candle in memory. And your dad, I believe, had died
just passed.
recently. Yeah, just passed, and you and Julie were in there, and participating. We had a big group in there.
Yeah,
that
big group.
night.
Mhm.
And I said, Jeff, come on over and light a candle. What was that like for you? I'm not kidding now. What was that really like for you, Jeff?
It was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Only because uncomfortable only because it just made me think about his passing and trying to process that. And here's the thing that I, when I think about like my dad has passed and then my sister has passed, is like with my dad, I always think about all the things that he didn't get to do.
Regrets?
Yeah. Well, but it's I don't have regrets on my end. Because I feel like I did everything I could do.
Right. Do you think he had regrets?
I don't know.
Okay.
I have regrets for him, if that even makes sense.
It makes sense.
I regret the fact that he didn't get to spend more time with me as an adult. I regret the fact that he didn't get to see more of my kids grow up.
Yeah.
So I don't even know if the regret's the right word, but it makes me feel very sad that he didn't get to experience the things I am experiencing with my grandkids.
Right.
Right. Now, he may not have even thought about it that way, because my dad was just a very simple mountain man from Eastern Kentucky who his mentality was, if you want to see me, you know where I live.
Right.
But that's just how he thought. I mean, my dad only came to my house as an adult one time in my adult life before he died.
Wow.
And in that time, I had to send him a plane ticket and fly him out so he could see one of my kids play basketball and hang out with me and drive in my Camaro, do the things I wanted him to do.
Right.
It's just not how he thought. Just not how he processed information. So
Not that he didn't love y'all or anything.
no, not at all.
Nothing like
no,
that.
nothing like that at all. I wanted so much more for him.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, now see what you've done. So you got me into all this kind of stuff. So all of that to say,
But how much easier is it today than it was? How many years ago was that, Jeff?
But I mean, how? But here's the crazy thing about it: how could lighting a candle make all of that come out? You know what I'm saying?
But it wasn't just the lighting of the candle itself. It was in the context of
absolutely
everything that was going
But
on.
I think that just goes to show we've got floodgates and we've got dams we build, and we got things we hold back. That sometime, some point, somewhere, that door's going to open, the dam's going to come down, and all this stuff's going to come out, and somebody with you is going to go, where'd all that come from?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You go back to the anger. I'm sure you've met many people, Jeff, and we have certainly at GriefShare, who are angry at God.
Yes, absolutely.
They'll finally admit it, but they're angry at God that this person died or this happened to them.
Yeah.
And they feel ashamed and guilty about that, but they got to work through that or they'll get stuck in their grief.
Yeah, absolutely.
That makes it really, really difficult.
Yeah. The last two on the list, we could, as we're talking, I'm just thinking we could literally talk for another hour. We're already an hour in, but we could talk about this for a while.
Well, Jeff one time got me up on stage. He just stayed with me. We're going to have a conversation. But I'm going to say this because I think you believe this too, Jeff. The Holy Spirit was there that night. I don't think it was necessarily you and I.
Yeah.
But what was supposed to be an hour, I think it was close to 2 hours.
2 hours,
wasn't it?
absolutely. Yeah.
Just talking about these things here Sunday night at church.
Yeah, absolutely. But the last two areas, we've got social and spiritual. Social, you had on here, be opportunistic, so church and community events, invest in healthy relationships, and listen to music. I thought that was an interesting one.
Music is great therapy.
Yeah.
And different types and styles of music. And the church offers all kinds of music opportunities. And I think that's good. But also social activities too.
Yeah.
Did Jesus like to go to parties, Jeff?
He did. I mean, we read about him going to wedding feasts.
Yes.
Matthew threw a party and had all of his friends over, and Jesus was there. So he would. You definitely see Jesus in social situations for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at this list of holistic, Jesus is a perfect example.
Yeah, absolutely.
He cried. He got angry.
Yep.
He socialized.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. When it comes to music, is there good and bad music? Or is it like any music could be good depending on the person?
Are you really asking that an hour in?
I know.
Wow, that what a question. We could spend an hour on that question.
Yes, we could. Yes, we could. Let me just say this without getting into the good and bad. I've had kids come in and they'll want to play. I ask them to play some music on pull it up on the phone that they like to listen to. And the kids that are really angry, there was a time they were coming in and playing this really heavy metal German kind of angry music. And that let me know where they were. And there was a reason they were connecting to that. Wanted to establish a reconnection, get past that anger. So if you listen to it, that would not be my music that I would want to listen to. Now, certainly there's music that's very degrading, and I'm going to say vulgar in its words and lyrics and that kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure. And then the last one was the spiritual aspect. So you got corporate worship, daily devotional, group Bible studies, and then prayer and meditation. So these are all very, a lot of them seem very simple. We talked about the natural side versus the medicated side. We also mentioned kind of the quick fix, immediate gratification side that our culture is in. Are any of these, like, when you do this, you'll see an immediate result, or is it all kind of a long game, lifelong goal of just keeping a healthy mindset?
Well, certainly keeping a healthy mindset. Who wouldn't want to do that? But when you talk about immediate, what is your terms?
I just think in our culture, because you could take any of these not from a mental health perspective. You could take any of these physical. There's a pill that you can take that's going to make you lose weight regardless of you change your lifestyle or not. There's take any of them. Social, there's things that you can do that's going to make you more whatever.
A lot of times people who are depressed will drink alcohol, which is a depressant.
Yeah.
And so in excess, that can really be very damaging.
Yeah.
We probably all have somewhere in our past an aunt or uncle or grandparent that had issues with that.
Yeah.
And they self-medicated. Food, that's my drug of choice.
Yeah.
Is food.
I was just going to say that there's a lot of ways to self-medicate.
Yep.
Yes.
We immediately go to alcohol and drugs to be the self-medication of choice. There's a lot of ways we can self-medicate.
Yep.
We can use a hobby to self-medicate. We can use food to self-medicate. We can use unhealthy relationships to self-medicate. There are a lot of ways that you can.
We do an Integrity Road group here,
Yep.
and it's dealing with pornography addiction, sexual addiction, and that's a way of self-medicating and get to the root of that. There's been some kind of trauma 9.5 times out of 10 that they're using that for self-medication. Gambling. I heard of a situation where a young man spent $22,000 on game gambling.
Wow.
And I think it was in 3 months. That blows my mind.
Yeah.
Wow.
But people get hooked on gambling and
That's right.
casinos and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I guess my question is really gets more to, is there a quick fix for mental health?
Jesus.
Because we live in a world where everybody wants
I
the quick
love
fix.
to
They
hear a
want
licensed professional counselor say Jesus.
Absolutely.
Well, that's the
because
truth.
because that is.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think now. So let me be the counselor side of that. Since Bill gave my answer, let me give maybe an answer he would give.
Thank you.
I don't think that negates having Jesus Christ in your heart and being a growing disciple doesn't negate our need to talk through things and to be in counseling and to work through issues of our past that the gospel needs to be applied to.
Thank you.
Because Jesus is 100% the answer. I remember, and the only reason I jumped to that, Bill, is because I remember being a very, very young pastor in my first church and a woman coming up to me and she says, I deal with depression on a daily basis. I don't know what to do. What do I need to do? Well, you need Jesus in your life. Okay, great. Pray, accept Jesus. And she looked at me and said, okay, now what do I do?
Right.
And I went, pray some more. And so basically she's saying to me, like, is it over now?
Yeah.
Right.
And so, I think we've got to be wise enough to understand that, man, the gospel heals all, changes all, forgives all. I mean, gospel does all of those things. But there are sometimes in our lives, sometimes a person has a Pauline type experience where they get saved and they go from gutter to glory. We know Paul's transformation experience. Sometimes you've got the sanctification process is a little bit longer. And you've got people stepping into your life and helping you and coaching you and helping you apply the gospel to those areas of your life. And I think that's where we have to be open to talking through, because the reality is that, man, I can be saved, I can be a pastor, I can be leading the crowd and still be dealing with my dad's death.
Yes.
And not have dealt with that correctly. You know what I mean? Or my sister's death or whatever. And so I think that those are the things that we can't just shelve because we know Jesus.
Yep.
You look at the rate of divorce now, and I know, Jeff, this has been on your heart. What can we do? We have divorce care here. That's people who've gone through it or going through it. But I know something that's been on your heart. You've discussed it with me, is what can we do to keep it from getting to that
absolutely.
place? What can we do in a preventative, proactive
Right.
way? And I like that's how you look at things, Jeff. It'd be preventative and proactive.
Yeah, because it's going to be hard to get everybody to be willing to call, Melissa and line up an appointment and see Bill. Right. It's just, I would love to think that 80% of our people would be willing to do that, even if it's just twice a year for a good checkup. Man, what a great thing that would be. But we've got to do as a church more and more things together that, like Bill's just talking about. We came up with this idea of, in marriage, I'm normally the last person that a couple sees before they get divorced. They've already gone through every other step, even to the lawyer, and now they come to me and they basically are looking for permission. They're not really looking for help.
Right.
Yeah.
Check off the list.
Check off the list. Yeah. And I just kind of threw out this language. We've got premarital counseling, and we call it before we say I do.
I love this.
And I told Bill, I said, man, wouldn't it be great if we could have a class and we could get couples to be involved? And the title of that class was Before We Say I'm Done.
Yeah, I like that.
Like, how awesome would that be for people to go, look, we both know we're at this point, but we don't want it to go away.
Right.
So please help us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Man, wouldn't it be awesome if you had 10 couples and you walked them through and we helped them, patch up and fix and repair and deal with whatever needs to be dealt with so that they could have a healthy marriage.
Yes.
Man, that's utopia, man, if we could get people to do that.
Absolutely.
And think of the effect it would have on their kids. And
Oh, my
children
goodness.
and
Absolutely.
just all over the place.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like, really, I think a lot of this comes back to the start of our conversation is the balance of this.
Yeah.
There's 5 different areas listed here. Any one of these areas and any one of these things in the areas can become self-medicated problems as opposed to a holistic help for this area.
Right.
We can all deal with mental health at the end of the day. And so keeping these things in check and keeping a balance of them, like looking at, you mentioned a hobby can be a self-medicated problem.
Absolutely.
Yes.
We can use malnutrition as a coping mechanism for grief, for pain, for anger, whatever it may be.
Bulimia or something like that. Sure.
Yeah. Even church, we can want church just to be the fix when
That's right.
church isn't the fix.
That's right.
The gospel, Jesus is the fix.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And so at the end of the day, yes, Jesus is the answer. But these are just some very practical. I'm just thinking through when we mentioned that first week, how many people in our church need to take this home or needed to actually put this into practice, but thought, that's something I'm going to have to actually pay attention to and work at, as opposed to it. This is just something one thing I can do and it fix everything.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's super important for us, but it's work that is worth it in the end. And it takes time. It takes effort to put some of these things into practice and thought, to maybe even just from a practical time management perspective to plan out our day or our week and to put some of these things into practice. But from a holistic standpoint, our mental health, I think, would be, and you would agree, would be in such a better state.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, that's good. That's y'all have anything else before we?
I would just say, and I was sitting here thinking, I hope that you asked that question, because the one thing I would say to our people that listen, to our podcast, is please don't wait until something's broke to try to fix it.
Right.
Irrevocable. I was trying to think of that word. A lot of times you've got marriages where they let it go so long and they have this irrevocable damage that happens, and they've already done something horrible, and then they go, hey, maybe we should go to marital counseling.
Yeah.
And you kind of want to go, you should have probably done that up here, before you created this
Right.
act that may not be able to have a way to come back from.
Right.
Yep.
You know, not saying that it can't, but sometimes it can be very difficult.
Yep.
So now you get down here, and now you've made Bill's job a lot harder
Right.
than if we would have hit it up here and said, "Hey, man, it feels like we're going down a road that's not healthy. You know, please hit it there.
Yeah.
You know, don't wait until you've had the heart attack."
Yeah.
The heart attack or the suicide, one of the things that Emmanuel Baptist Church has
Yes.
done for a long time is a 2-day suicide prevention through the state.
Yes.
To help people be able to deal with it, recognize it, and help it. Other people who are in that place, not until, you know, a lot of times it's like, oh, I wish we had done this, or this. But that's something the church is giving back to the community, is hosting a suicide prevention program through the state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And please hear this, guys. Nobody's perfect.
100%.
Nobody's perfect.
Yep.
That's one of the reasons that I've been transparent, and we try to be very open, because we just got a family like you've got a family. We do life like you do life, and it's still hard, and there's still things that are right and some are wrong. You know, just life.
Yeah.
we'll have couples come in, and Melissa and I are fussing about something, and they go about, I'm like, y'all argue? I'm like, all the time.
I mean, nobody's perfect. So,
Yeah.
you know, please just drop that shield.
Yeah.
And realize that, you know, we're all out here trying to do life. And as believers, man, we're walking through this world with Jesus Christ, the Holy Spirit living in us. We are the temple of the Holy Spirit.
Yep.
And so let us that much more pay attention to this holistic balance that we need to be a part of.
Yep. Absolutely. Yep. And that's how I was going to end it off, that we should expect struggles.
Yes,
We live in a
absolutely.
broken world. I thought of John 10:10, when you were talking about marriage, and marriage or not, like fresh out of college, fresh out of high school, going into college, we should expect, and regardless of your mental state, we should expect problems to come.
Right.
John 10:10, the thief comes in the night to steal, kill, and destroy.
Yeah.
We should expect that. That's the world that we live in. But at the end of that verse,
Right.
I've come that you may have life and have it to the full. And so that's the answer. Jesus is the answer to all of it.
Absolutely.
So we should absolutely take this seriously. Should look at some of these things.
I'm glad you said that. We need to expect the hardship. We're working with a couple. They're doing really, really well. And then I'm telling them, spiritual warfare is coming.
That's right.
Because Satan's going to want to destroy this
Right.
good thing that's happened. And it never fails.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
But if you're looking for it and you're aware of it, you can prevent it.
yeah,
Satan's
good stuff.
target is not the church. Satan's
No.
target is families.
Yeah.
Because if Satan can destroy the family, he can destroy the core unit that God created to spread the gospel.
And would you say he goes after the healthiest families first?
Without question.
Okay.
Yeah, I think he goes out. Yes, he does. He attacks them all.
Yeah, that's good. So regardless where you're at, take this seriously. Take these tips and see how you can be proactive even on the front end if you're not dealing with anything. And having Bill on our, I don't know, on our staff what the terminology is, because it's kind of a partnership. But Bill, I would say you're incredible. I love you and what you do.
That. I appreciate you saying that. It's a privilege for us to be here, Melissa and I, and we feel we have a ministry
Absolutely.
here,
Yeah.
and so it's a privilege to be here. It's a wonderful experience just
for
today.
sure.
And we didn't rehearse any of this.
And
we just sat down and started talking. That's the truth.
Julie, I was nice to Bill today.
He was very nice, Julie.
Yes.
Yeah. So if there's anybody who doesn't know Bill, maybe thinking through some of these things and think, man, I really need to talk to someone. Bill's a great person for that. So
Thank you, Kim.
Yeah, give Melissa a call. She'll tell you all about Bill.
or
I
Julie.
don't want to do that. Yeah, call Julie. I'd rather you call Julie. Yeah.
That's good.
Good deal. Well, Bill, thanks for joining us.
Yes.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you. Thank y'all.
Yeah.
Always
Thank you.
great.
Thank you all for listening. We'll see you next week.